When it comes to the best buddy cop or best mismatched buddy movie ever, what comes to your mind? Because for me, there is just one film that sums up that catchphrase in two sweet words. Midnight Run, starring Robert De Niro and the late Charles Grodin. Now, I've got a little confession to make here. When this film came out in 1988, I was studying drama at a specific college in London, and after I saw this film, I didn't see it in the year of release, which again, it's a bit of a strange oddity with me, but I almost entertained the idea of wanting to become a bail bondsman or bounty hunter, if you want to know it by the better phrase. I know, don't laugh. It's true. I was seriously entertaining the thought of doing it. I wouldn't do it here in the UK because, let's face it, the UK doesn't have much in the way of adventure like you would in. I think the whole thing with Midnight Run is that it kind of romanticizes the idea of being a bounty hunter. It really does, but it does it in a way that, you know, it's not like the Gerard Butler film, I think, which is called Bounty Hunter or Bounty Hunters, I can't remember. And that kind of does romanticize the idea of what it's like to be a bail bondsman. But in this particular case, because you've got Martin Brest, who is the director of this film, now you'll definitely know his more well-known movies, such as Beverly Hills Cop, the original, and Meet Joe Black. Really did not like that film at all. It wasn't a I couldn't believe this is Martin Brest. Martin Brest also did Scent of a Woman, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But for me, this is his best film. Now, when Charles Grodin passed away on the 18th of May of bone marrow cancer, cancer is a bitch, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget it. Everybody was, in his obituary, people were talking about well-known films of his, like The Heartbreak Kid was Sybil Shepherd. Haven't seen it yet, but I do want to watch it. Of course, everybody knows Charles Grodin as I'm trying to think what you would sum him up as the hapless hero, in inverted commas, of the Beethoven movies. Never saw them, but I kind of remembered him and his hangdog expression on his face. But for me, his collaboration with Robert De Niro in Midnight Run is something to be cherished. If you've never seen this film, I hope this review today convinces you to watch it, because there are so many great things about this movie. For one thing, Robert De Niro, he hadn't done a comedy since King of Comedy in 1982 from Martin Scorsese, and he felt like after doing The Untouchables, he wanted to get into something a bit more comedic, not necessarily lighthearted, but with that kind of right tone of, I don't know, who would you think would be like maybe Eddie Murphy being serious as he was in Beverly Hills Cop? I think he was kind of going for that flavor, and it really, really works. You got a terrific cast in this movie, and I will get to those guys in a minute. And yeah, it's a pretty manly film, but you know, there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just kind of like the nature of writing back then. You know, you write for the particular project, for a particular actor you've got in mind. I've got to say, the opening, the establishing shot that we have at the beginning of this film, where De Niro walks up these stairs in a really dilapidated apartment, and he's just got his cool leather jacket on. He's walking the walk. He's got the real swagger, and it's at that moment I'm just thinking, at that moment you know what kind of guy Jack Walsh is going to be. He doesn't take any prisoners. He's got a lot of smarts. One thing I do love about this film and films of the 80s, especially the latter part of the 1980s, is the analog technology they have and the various means of getting around. Don't forget, this is a pre-internet world, so things were just a lot more. I always say this in my videos, that things were a lot more simpler then. They are, and I wish we could go back to those times, but this is kind of like a reminder that, you know, anything that's analog or old-fashioned, I mean, God forbid he takes notes on a notepad. I mean, nobody does that now, hardly ever. It's all on an iPad. It's kind of redundant in some ways, and I just love that about his character. You just know him in the first 5 minutes, and then you meet Charles Grodin as Jonathan Mardukas. Now, the basic plot of this film is that Mardukas embezzled $15 million from a Las Vegas gangster called Jimmy Serrano, played by the great Dennis Farina. Now, if you don't know anything about Dennis Farina, he used to be a policeman in real life, then he gave that up and he became an actor. With no formal training, from what I know, talk about a very smooth transition, and it really, really works. I mean, he's a phenomenal actor anyway. It's so sad he's not with us anymore, but this guy gives one of the best performances as a mob boss. I mean, he's both terrifying and hilarious. He's always making veiled threats to his goons, who he calls Moron Number 1 and Moron Number 2.
Let me tell you two stupid motherfuckers something. I don't want to get another phone call like this, because if I do, I'm going to get on a fucking plane and I'm going to blowtorch the both of you. Do you understand?
I gotta say as well, Robert De Niro, not only one of my favourite actors, he was a really good looking dude. And in fact, they kind of play on this joke at the beginning of the film where Moron Number 1 has a bit of a man crush on him. It's kind of like, it's not repeated throughout, but you kind of get the gist from that one moment that, it's not just, we're kind of seeing the hunkiness of Robert De Niro through this mobster's eyes. It's actually really quite a clever device what they do in this film.
Are you going to propose?
Propose?
Propose, because if you're not, quit staring at me, okay?
Staring at you.
You're
Come
staring
on, Joey,
at me.
back off, will you please? Come on.
And when I get to the main essence of this film, I've got to talk about Yaphet Kotto as well as Agent Alonzo Mosley. Kind of a running gag through the film, and it's a really funny running gag. That's the funny thing with this movie, right? You can take some comedies, they have a running gag, but it stops being funny after the third or fourth time you've heard it. But in this particular film, when you hear Alonzo Mosley, it just gets funnier every time. And I've got to give Yaphet Kotto a lot of kudos for his performance, because you think he's like the one-note FBI man on the tail of Charles Grodin and Robert De Niro's characters, but there's a lot more to him than meets the eye. It's really, really cool. And John Ashton, who was also in the first Beverly Hills Cop movie, he plays Marv, and he's he's a rival bounty hunter against Jack. So there's a nice dynamic between them. And Joe Pantoliano as the Bales Bondman's. I can't say it now. He's the boss for Jack Walsh. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Well, actually, guys, it's just after midnight here while I'm recording this, so it kind of makes sense given the film's title. Yeah, so Jack has got 5 days to deliver Jonathan Mardukas from New York to LA, and that sounds like a song, I'm pretty sure that is, in 5 days before the stroke of midnight on Friday. And it's just the adventures about how they get from A to B. It's never plain sailing, as you'll get in a typical mismatched buddy comedy. But one amazing thing about this film is like 2 hours and 7 minutes, but you never get bored. It is just so, like, the editing in this film is so good from start to finish. Like, all the fine points are just, it's just such a beautifully fine-tuned. I got to talk about Danny Elfman's music score. Probably my favorite of his ever, more so than the Batman movie. It is, without a question of a doubt. If you played this music to me and said to me, can you guess who that is? Danny Elfman is not the person I will think of, because it is the most un-Danny Elfman music score you have ever heard. It's a feel-good score. It hits the right notes when it wants to, and it just gives you a sense of, it kind of invites the audience in, and it makes you really great that you're on board the ride with these two guys getting to their final destination. And one thing that you don't see in films today as well is, like, there's a real heart to the partnership between Grodin and De Niro, and you really see that start to develop as the film progresses. It could have been a one-note thing where De Niro just takes Charles Grodin into the the Bond office and get his money, then off he goes. There's no more film. But the way this works, it's a character study. Charles Grodin is the straight man as Mardukas. De Niro is the huff and puff tough guy, and but he's got a heart beneath him. You kind of find it more as it progresses. They get to know each other. It's almost like if you were stranded with somebody. I mean, there's a thing they talk about. Like if you put some strangers into a room, by the end of a certain time, they will know each other inside out, and in some cases, they might become best friends. And in this case, you kind of see that beautiful friendship developing, and it is a really beautiful friendship. It's like the interplay between these two guys is great.
Remember those chickens around the Indian reservation? There's some good-looking chickens there, Jack. You know, between us.
Yeah, a couple there might have taken a shot at.
Charles Grodin gets to show sides of his comedy talent that I never knew he had. And I can't give that away because you need to watch the film and see, but he's got a real knack for going against the grain. Put it that way. That's all I'm going to say about that one. And Midnight Run. If you've never seen this film, made in 1988 or released in 1988, you've got to do me a favor, just watch this film. It is fantastic. I watch this movie at least 2 or 3 times a year. Don't own the Blu-ray at the moment, but I'm looking for a collector's edition if it's out there. But Charles Grodin, if that guy left us a legacy of movies, for me, this is his greatest performance ever. You got to check it out. So I hope you liked this film review today for Midnight Run. If you haven't seen it, no, I'm not going to say it again, but you know the score already. But this is kind of like my little tribute as well to Charles Grodin. I didn't know what other way to do it. I wasn't going to do anything initially, but then when this film appeared on my radar again, I thought, you know what? You know, this is my little gift to you guys, and may he rest in peace as well. But until then, I'll see you on my next video review.